Hey friends, welcome to vlog number 4, podcast number 4. Today is just going to be really straightforward and simple information for you from my knowledge as a holistic aromatherapist. And today's podcast is all about what are essential oils. What are essential oils? So these are things that we're hearing so much about, right? You've probably been invited to a party before about essential oils. Maybe you have some friends in your network that are really familiar with them and are like suggesting them to you for everything possible that you can imagine. And you're like, why will that help? Maybe you have heard someone make really outrageous healing claims about essential oils, and maybe that's kind of been a turnoff for you. I totally understand all of those things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got into essential oils, and then we're just going to talk about, the straightforward information about what they are. And that's it. We're really straightforward and simple today. So about 20 years ago, I started to have a lot of health problems, and it came on slowly, but it really amplified itself in my mid-20s after I got married. At that time, we were living in a city that flooded regularly. There was a lot of mold everywhere, and there was a lot of just really tough weather to get through. And then, of course, there was the stress of being newly married, going back to grad school, lots of different things kind of piled on top of each other. And I started to notice that my body just was not the same as it had once been. And I felt like I was way too young to be experiencing those types of things in my body. And so I started to listen to my instincts a little bit about what was happening, because I had gone to doctors, I'd gone to chiropractors. I'd gone to a lot of different people, gotten testing done. Everybody acknowledged that things weren't working properly, but nobody could really figure out what was going on at that point. And so I knew that at that point I was going to have to start advocating for my own health and find the answers that I needed for myself, because I wasn't getting them from the places I expected to get them. And I also want to preface this by saying that at this time, I was still gardening a lot of my own food, eating a lot of really great, nutritious food. We never really had a lot of unhealthy habits. And so I was already doing sort of like the expected, quote unquote, things that you're told to do when you're not feeling well. I was eating well. I was exercising. I was reducing stress. I was, doing all the things you're supposed to do. So I decided to go to the health food store, and I'm like, I gotta see if something speaks to me. And at the health food store, I started looking at the different products available, and I started thinking about just products that I was using on my body in general. And I started to notice that I couldn't read the back of my shampoo bottle. There was some words on there that were like 24 syllables long. And even when I would go to the health food store and look for a product that was just made from natural stuff, because I started to realize that natural stuff was probably the way to go for me, even there I was unable to find products at that time that didn't have synthetic ingredients. So this sent me on a huge, huge rabbit hole of research. And I started to get my hands on different studies and different websites of experts. This is before podcasting even, that we're talking about toxicity in the body, and that we're talking about how many of the synthetic products that are out there available for us to be using for our body care, our home care, cleaning, things like that, they contain toxins that our body doesn't know how to recognize. Now, of course, as humans, we're adapted to be able to get rid of toxicity. We have lots of organs of elimination, but we are not adapted to get rid of the level of toxicity to which we are now exposed through a cocktail, an ongoing cocktail of synthetic chemicals that are exposed to us in our air, in our water, in our products, even in our furnitures. And as I studied more about these synthetic ingredients, I found out that a lot of them are petroleum based, and a lot of them are endocrine disruptors in the body. And at that time, I was really coming to understand that my hormones on a very foundational, fundamental level were struggling. Long story short, shortly after that, I found a thyroid nodule. I found out that I had a lot of genetic things going on, and this is a much longer story, but the piece that I want to take away from you here is that the reason I started to learn about essential oils is because I was looking for alternatives to all of that junk. I didn't want to put skincare, body care on me anymore that had a bunch of gross ingredients in it that I didn't know what they were going to do in my body. I knew that's not how the creator created them to be interacting with us. And so I started to look for alternatives. In the process of this, I started to make my own soap, which is why my business is called Prairie Soap House. The apothecary didn't come until much later. I started to grow my own medicinal herbs. I started to even further clean up my nutrition. And I started to learn about essential oils because I was starting to make these products at home. I wanted them to smell great, and then learned, just like so many other things, that the scent products that are out there, whether it's air fresheners or fragrance oils or perfumes that you get at the mall, all of these things also contain a pretty nasty cocktail of endocrine disrupting chemicals, which I wanted nothing to do with at that time. So I learned about essential oils first as a way to put scents into my soaps. Soaps evolved into lotions. Lotions evolved into many other things. I started researching herbs. I started researching essential oils even further. And what I happened to notice is that every time I was making soap or I was working with the essential oils, I felt like my stress level went down significantly. I felt like the way I was experiencing stress in my body shifted. I felt like my moods lifted. And I started to notice that we weren't getting as sick as much anymore either, without even realizing what I was doing. With all the research that I was doing, with all the classes that I was taking, I ended up investing in getting myself certified as a holistic aromatherapist. And in that process, I came to learn about what essential oils are and all of their therapeutic benefits. And that is what a lot of this podcast is going to be about, is just some of that basic information. And today I want to share with you the very first piece, which is, what are essential oils? There's a lot of misinformation out there about essential oils, their history, where they come from, what they are, and what they do. And so if we can just take a very scientific look at what essential oils are, I think it helps a lot to creating a foundation for us to move forward in knowledge with these things and knowing how to work with them safely and ethically. Essential oils are basically something extra that very evolved plants have figured out how to make. So not every plant out there produces essential oil. This is something that I think people have a huge misunderstanding about. They think they can go out into their garden and they can distill any old plant that's out there and that there's going to be an essential oil that comes from it. And that is just not the case. So all plants produce what are called primary metabolites. Primary metabolites of plants include things like carbohydrates, amino acids, vitamins, hormones, even flavonoids, the things that create flavors in plants. Those are primary metabolites, and they're considered to be the things that the plant absolutely has to have in order to be alive. We have similar things as humans, right? We have to have certain macronutrients to stay alive. We have to breathe. We have to drink water. Those are some of our primary functions. And without certain compounds present in our body to process those things, we will not be alive. Now, a very small amount of plants that are out there have evolved different materials, different compounds that are beyond what the primary metabolites will do. These are things that are not necessary for the basic life functions of the plant, but they serve an additional purpose. And these are called secondary metabolites, okay? And secondary metabolites are going to include a lot of different compounds. They are usually compounds that help in some way in an immune function for the plant, okay? So maybe they are compounds that help fight off pathogens. Maybe they're compounds that help fight off parasites. Maybe there's special antioxidants that help that plant to have an extra edge. Some of them, when a bug or a fungus or a virus is exposed to them, it will basically end that competitive invader so that the plant remains safe. You know, these are all sort of immune functions of the plant. They do a lot of different things for the plant. And Essential oils are one of the secondary metabolites that plants produce. There's many, many others that they produce, but essential oils are one of the secondary metabolites. So again, most plants do not produce essential oils, and a plant doesn't have to produce any secondary metabolites at all. Now, when it comes to essential oils, I want to share with you that think of like I don't know, it's got to be millions of different plants that are on the planet at this point. We're discovering more all the time, right? And that's plants on the land and it's plants in the water as well. With the plant species, only about 450 of those species produce any amount of essential oil. And some of those plants are plants that we're probably not going to want to produce essential oils from for a therapeutic or even like a scent reason, because not every essential oil actually smells good and not every essential oil is truly therapeutic to the body. So of that 450 plant species that produce essential oils, only about 125 to 150 can be used for therapeutic purposes in aromatherapy. Wow. So that means that when we are holding an essential oil in our hand, we have something that is truly, truly precious. And the thing to add to that little bit of knowledge is that it takes a massive amount of plant material to produce even one drop of essential oil. Okay. So when we're using essential oils, we want to make sure that we are respecting that very precious resource by using them intelligently, using them ethically, using them sustainably, sourcing them from sustainable places. And I'm sure I'll do other podcasts about all of those subjects, but getting back to what essential oils are. Okay, so we have this plant. It has produced secondary metabolites, and one of the secondary metabolites is an essential oil. What can that essential oil do for the plant? Well, it's kind of things that we've talked about before. They might put off chemicals into the air or into the soil that fight off competing plants or fight off invaders like viruses, like bacteria, like funguses. There is another function that essential oils also can do, and that is to kind of the opposite. They want to attract, but only the right kind of things. They want to attract pollinators. So if we think of essential oils that are examples of ones that might be fighting off invaders, we'd be looking at more of the immune essential oils, like the eucalyptus species, for example, is a really great one. But if we want to look at essential oils that are more for the attractive purpose, we're going to be looking at essential oils that are in that perfumey category. So kind of like rose or neroli or amazing flower scents like that, that for us, we're just immediately attracted to them. And so the plants have evolved this ability to produce these secondary metabolites, and they serve these functions. They serve the function of immunity for the plant, keeping the plant safe, keeping it away from invaders, and also to attract the right things into that plant's life so that it has an easier time producing, reproducing, staying alive. Now, because humans have some similar functions to plants, we have some similar structures to plants. So a plant has xylem, we have blood. A plant has different kinds of fibers that keep it upright. We have skeleton and so on and so forth. A plant eats through the sun. We eat through eating plants. We can make an assumption, a possible assumption, that those essential oils will perhaps work in similar ways for our bodies as they do for the plants. And what modern aromatherapy is finding is that this is in fact the case, that you can go out to PubMed and you can search a variety of different essential oils, and you will learn that they are being studied by scientists and pharmaceutical companies for different applications to boost immunity, to help with a wide variety of things within our bodies, and also to help us with moods and even sexual function. Fascinating. Now, people have kind of known for since forever that we like the scents of plants for the most part, and the plants that we like are the ones that are producing the essential oils, the secondary metabolites. And essential oils have been captured before modern distillation technology in different ways. They could have been captured through tincturing in a carrier oil. There were some earlier versions of distillation that weren't exactly distillation, where a different flower or a different herb was boiled with water and then recaptured in some way or in oil, and that scent was captured that way. There's enfleurage, which is a way to capture scent in a solid fat like a lard or a coconut oil by impressing the flowers into it. Lots of different ways that in the past essential oils were captured in very, very, very small amounts through these more primitive methods. But when modern distillation was invented, that was through the study of alchemy. Ultimately, we started to learn that we could use distillation for a lot of different things. Of course, people think of distillation as making alcohol, which it can do, but a slightly different form of distillation, and actually several different forms of distillation, they can capture the essential oil. So what happens in distillation is that you put a plant into your distiller with water, apply a little extra space in there so that there's room for steam, and apply heat. So you can see that there's already the action of all the elements. We have wood through the plant material, fire through the heat, space through the space of the distiller. We have water that the plant material is in. Then we have air. As that plant material boils, the essential oil becomes a gaseous state, and it rises into the distiller and goes through the coil of the distiller where it's cooled, and it recondenses into two byproducts of distillation. The first is the essential oil, and the second is the hydrosol. You might also have heard hydrosols called hydrolates or flower waters. So the essential oil is going to be a very small percentage of the byproduct of distillation. The hydrosol is going to be a much larger percentage of the distillation. The hydrosol still will have a little bit of suspended essential oil in it, but usually the essential oil will either rise to the top or float to the bottom, and then will be separated off of the hydrosol in a different ways. Some people do it by freezing. Some people use a separatory funnel, which is what I use when I do my distillation. But the byproduct of the essential oil is going to be very minimal compared to the amount of plant material that was put in, and also compared to the amount of hydrosol that is produced. Then we have the essential oil. And how did essential oils get their name? Well, again, it goes back to the study of the elements, and in this case, back to the Greeks. So the Greeks had a little bit of different understanding of what the elements were compared to traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, but they did understand that there was something called quintessence. And it was a difficult word to define. It was like the fifth element. It was like that undefinable thing that they knew was there, and they knew it had actions, but they couldn't really put their finger on it. They couldn't contain it. They couldn't hold it. They couldn't anything. So that kind of a concept was called quintessence. And as essential oils were discovered, that quintessence idea was then applied to them sort of as a concept to understand what they were. And then later we came to just understand them as essential oils. So essential oils are not essential for the life of a plant. That's kind of ironic, right? So not all plants produce them. They're very rare. But when they are used, they do produce a sort of quintessence in us. There is something that happens when our bodies interact with an essential oil. And that'll be a podcast for another time. So I hope this gives you a good sort of brief overview of starting a little bit of basic information about what are essential oils and why they might work for us, a little bit of the history behind it, how distillation works, how precious these materials really are for us. So excited that you could join us. Please like, subscribe, comment, give us some good reviews if you're watching this on the podcast. And the last little bit I want to share with you today is, because we have talked about essential oils today, a lot of people are looking for ways to learn about them. I do have a mini course coming up that I'm super excited about that I want to share with you. And I'm going to just point you to that by saying, if you go to my webpage, you can go to classes. under the shop here, and then you'll see the essential oil blending mini class. There's all the information that you need to get enrolled there. And that should be a little bit of information for you where you can learn how to intuitively blend essential oils by coming to a live class with me to learn my easiest method that I've been using for years to blend essential oils easily, quickly, and make it super fun. So go ahead and check that out, and we'll see you next time.